This week on North Country Restorations.
Square Body Makeover Part 2. It's painting time.
Enjoy! Nothing's wrong with me.
Why are you in a t-shirt?
Because I'm boycotting the cold.
It's 34 degrees.
I'm not inside.
It's 62 degrees.
That's fine. We need to get working and then I'll get my blood flowing.
All right, let's see how these parts came out. I think they look pretty good. Round 1 of red.
I like it. No flies.
Better not be. So obviously these parts are going to stay red. The hood's going to stay red. But the tailgate gets that black two-tone down the center of it. So this will get wet sanded. I'll mask it off for the black and then I'll re-clear coat everything. So we'll get these out of the booth. And my goal today is to get the doors and the fenders painted red inside and out. So I'll flip those over, prep the back sides of the doors. Back sides of the fenders are already done. And then we'll flip them back over, sand the fronts, and then I could hang them in the booth and get everything sprayed.
I'll spray them this time.
You don't want to see that.
They do want to see that.
I don't want to see that. So those could all get sprayed red and they could sit and dry, and then I'll start prepping the bed and get that ready for primer. If you've kind of noticed a trend here, I usually bring things up in stages. So I always try to account for dry times of materials. So I have stuff in paint, now that could sit and dry. I have stuff in primer that's been sitting and drying. And then when those parts get in paint, I have something else to do. I could start sanding and prepping. So I always try to think of moving the job forward. So things need to sit and dry when you're doing body and paint work. So if you always give yourself something to do, that doesn't hinder you from getting more work done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I understand it.
You just try to keep busy.
Yep. Keep moving.
And then when the bed is in primer, I could work on the cab. So again, I always have something to do. So let's get those parts out of the booth so I can get to work on some other stuff. That's good. I'll find a home for everything else. I'm running out of space.
Yeah, I can see that. It's crazy. Because now you just double the vehicle.
Okay, so I just block sanded the doors with 180 grit dry. Now, the next step that is really the most important thing you can do, a lot of people I think skip over this, is guide coat this. So what that does is it's a black powder that you wipe on the panel and it goes in all those 180 sand scratches. And then when I block this out with 320, I'll know when those are all gone. It'll also show any little low spots, but most importantly is making sure that you sand that scratch out all the way. There is actually a proper way to put guide coat on. You want to make sure your panel is clean first, because if there's sanding dust inside these scratches, the guide coat can't go in there. First thing I'm going to do is just wipe them down with a little glass cleaner. And then we're going to just take some compressed air, blow them off, make sure that glass cleaner is dry and there's no dust left. Now we just take the guide coat. I like Merca brand, that's my favorite. And to make sure it's on the pad all the way, I just flip it over and twist. And then you want to fully cover the panel. Then I just take my blow gun and blow the dust off of it. Now that is ready to sand with our next grit. And like I said, this is really important because when you're jumping grits, especially like 180 to 320 or 320 to 600, you want to make sure all those coarse scratches are gone. So you could see how that fills them all in. And when I start sanding, you'll see how where you start to sand, you could still kind of see where the scratches are. So once obviously all the black is gone, you know you got it all out. So you see how you could still see a couple little lines. Those are 180 grit scratches that are still in the primer. So I'll sand this until it's all gray and you can't see any black lines or marks in it anymore. Do that on both doors. And then this is getting sealer and then that red single stage. And then that's going to get sanded so I could paint my two-tone and then clear coat the whole panel. So I don't have to step my grits down any further than this. We're going to leave it in 320, scuff pad, and then that'll just get sealer and single stage. All right, I got another round of parts painted. All that stuff you saw me sanding. Let's go check them out. So fenders, and doors, back sides on both. Those came out nice. I didn't film any of this because I'm just spraying everything red Then I'm gonna sand all this, and then we'll mask up for the two-tone with the black, and then I'll clear it all. Today is the Tuesday after Easter. You guys wanna see what it's doing outside up here? Same thing it does every day. It's snowing. It's just warm enough that it's melting off the roof when it comes down. But it's been doing this for 2 days. It just won't stop this year. Just won't stop. Can't wait for summer. So the cab will be the last thing I sand and paint. The bed is up next. I'm gonna try the eraser wheel and take some of this double-sided tape off, and we're gonna see what it does to the stripe. Give it a try. And then I gotta get this all sanded down, check it over for any dings or dents. And I'm probably gonna go through and weld up these holes. There was nothing on here that I removed, but obviously at some point, someone probably had some like tie down things, or maybe, you know what they actually look like is it was probably a little bed rail. So we'll weld those holes up. None of that's going back on. Let's grab that eraser wheel. So this is just what it sounds like. It's basically a big eraser on a pneumatic tool. So this is great for taking off stuff like that double-sided tape. But I'm curious what it'll do to the stripe because it's so old and dried up. I hit this spot a little bit with a grinder. Noisy, makes a little bit of a mess, but that's not bad. I'll go over the whole thing with this and get that all off of there, and then I could start sanding it down. The inside of the bed I'm not going to touch. That's going to get a spray-in truck bed liner. Why does it feel like lava?
Oh, I mean, I maybe wait, but I drank it. But it's gonna be lava. It's gonna be lava. Don't do it again. I tried not to. I put milk in after.
Well, the bed is in primer. So we got to block sand this thing down and get it in paint. This side is all done. I did just like I showed you guys on the doors and fenders. So that was 180 grit dry, guide coated it, and then 320 dry. And then I just go around with a red Scotch-Brite and tune it up. So the reason I could get away with leaving it a little coarse, normally you'd step down one more grit from 320, but because this is getting a sealer and then red single stage paint, that single stage is a little thicker, and that's all getting sanded. And then I'm gonna do my black base coat for our two-tone and then re-clear the whole thing. So when I sand that red single stage with 600 grit, that's gonna kind of smooth it out a little, fine-tune the last little bit. Normally on something like this, like if I was doing Neil's Bronco, that's getting painted silver. So you'd go 180, 320, guide coat it again, and then go 600 wet. And that would get that 320 scratch out. But with a solid color and a single stage paint, you could kind of walk that line of leaving it a little coarse. Doesn't really hurt anything. Let's get this blocked out with 180, guide coat it, 320, and then this thing will be ready for sealer and paint. All right, so as you can see, the bed's all sanded. I wiped it all down, and typical fashion, we're gonna epoxy prime, and then this is gonna get 3 coats of that red single stage. I'm gonna need a new paint suit when I'm done. Get out of my booth. Well, I'm working on the doors and the fenders here. So I'm getting these ready to paint our two-tone. So as you saw, this is 3 coats of a single stage paint. That means there's no clear coat on top of it. Single stage is just one product and it dries shiny. So this is kind of how cars used to be painted, especially solid colors. A lot of restoration guys like to use single stage because it adds build thickness and its color all the way through. So especially on red and black, that's the most common when you're restoring a car to use this particular product. The reason I chose to use it here is because the whole truck's getting painted inside and out. So I'm able to spray the back sides of the doors, the front of the doors, everything all at once. And then I could go back and wet sand this, do my two-tone color, clear coat the top, but I don't have to mess with the back side of the door or the back side of the fender or the door jambs on the truck. That'll just remain the red single stage. So the best way to do this, I'm just using like a medium hard block with 600 grit, and sanding it flat to where it's not shiny anymore and you can't see any texture in the paint. So I could then tape this off, do my black base coat, unmask it, and then clear coat the whole panel. And that'll leave this really smooth and flat. And then also, the nice thing, because it's single stage, if I have a little bleed through or something with my black base, you could wet sand it and not hurt the color because it's color all the way through. So I'll get these all sanded and then they could go in the booth and get taped up. I'm actually going to paint the doors laying flat like this. I would never recommend that on a metallic color, but especially black and red, no problem. And the reason you wouldn't want to do that on metallic, you want to paint everything as if it's on the vehicle. So like a door, for instance, you want it like it would be on the truck. Or a hood, you wouldn't want to paint that hanging. You would want to paint that as if it was on the truck, flat. That way all your metallics land the proper way. Stay out of my way. All right, I got the doors and fenders in the booth. They're all sanded and prepped and masked off, and we're ready to do our two-tone. So remember, I made those templates before. These are kind of just a rough guide for me. I'm actually gonna measure off of them. They all averaged out like 11.5 to 12 inches from the body line down, and they were about 5.25 from the body line up. So I'm gonna just take that measurement and make it consistent on all the panels because these were all different. And it doesn't really matter, the stripe and the molding are gonna cover it, but I'd like the lines to be as close as possible. Obviously, if we're really concerned, I'd be painting this all together on the truck so I could tape it off all together. But again, that stripe's gonna cover everything. So we'll measure off that. And then on the fenders here, I got my graphics out. If the camera lady will come around this side.
I'm taking it slow, so not making everyone dizzy. I'm coming.
Actually, I'm gonna go to that fender.
Oh, okay, sure.
So on the fenders, this stripe actually goes down and around the front because this whole front piece stays red. So I got these separated out from the package. I could measure the back and then figure out where this has to go in the front and make sure I tape my line in the right spot. Again, this will cover wherever my line is, so I have a little bit of wiggle room here to get it close, but that ends right at the light. So I could just kind of reference off that when I tape up to spray my black. So let's start with the doors. So I got my cool little magnetic ruler here that I could just put right on the panel. We'll put that right up to the body line. And again, these all seem to measure anywhere from 11.5 to 12 inches. So we're gonna go right at that 11.5. That molding's pretty wide. So I'm just gonna make a little tape mark at 11.5. And then we're gonna go up 5.25. And I'll make a little tape mark there. Do the same on the other side of the door, and then I could pull a tape line between those. All right, so that's from the body line to here, 11.5 inches. So we want our tape to be on this side of the line, so I'm gonna pull a tape line up here, and then I could peel these off, and then that'll leave where I wanna put my actual fine line that we're gonna paint up to. And then we're gonna wrap our graphic around so it goes into the jam. So this is 3M blue fine line tape. This is for like laying out graphics and stuff. It's basically vinyl, where masking tape is like paper. Sometimes you get a little bleed through. This will leave a nice sharp edge. All right, so down here and down here, we'll tape off. This will get sprayed black, and then we'll untape it and everything will get clear coated. So I just gotta do the same thing on this door. And then the fender, will be really careful to measure the front of the door to make sure it matches this part of the fender perfectly, because that's where those two lines are gonna come together. And then the front is not as important, but anywhere the panels butt to one another, we want to make sure they match.
What are you doing?
Determining where this decal needs to go so I could mask off the stripe accordingly. All right, everything's in the booth taped up, wiped down. I'm just gonna mix up some black base coat here. I'm gonna give it 3 coats and then let that dry. We could untape everything and then clear coat the whole panels. So this stuff's just mixed 1-to-1. All right. 74. It's the first time I felt warmth in I don't know when. All right, so I got 3 coats of base coat on here. You saw that first coat I put on was kind of transparent. Anytime you're doing graphics, you want your first coat to be just very light to kind of bed it into that edge where the tape is. If you put a big wet heavy coat on, it could bleed underneath the tape. So these are all dry and ready to unmask, and then we could clear coat everything. Don't worry about the fact you could see these little sand scratches in here. Black base coat is like pretty thin. So this has all been sanded with 600 grit. All you're seeing is that scratch kind of like in the base. That's not going to show up in the clear coat or anything. That's all going to be completely covered. So nothing to be concerned with. I feel like I'm being circled by a shark. Just doing circles around me the whole time. All right. Give these a little wipe down, tack rag them off, and they're ready for clear coat.
Put the trash in the trash can.
Garbage goes in the garbage can. I swear, black and red is just the best color combination. Nothing looks better. These are gonna look great on the truck. We'll let them harden up for a few days before I wet sand and polish them. That way the clear could shrink a little and all the solvents could escape out of it. So we'll set those aside. I could prep the bed still and the tailgate and get those painted. But those came out great. So obviously the cab still needs to be stripped down and primed and sanded, but the bed is red along with the tailgate. So those could get sanded and I could tape them off for the black. But the rest of the day today, I'm gonna work on the cab on this fuel system. You've seen me do these before. I got a brand new Tanks Inc. tank, and that is going to relocate the fuel pump inside the tank. So this will fit down inside the tank, and then we won't hear that thing whining on the frame rail. So I got the truck set up on the lift. I'm gonna throw it up in the air and drop this old tank out of there and figure out what they got going on. So I'm assuming somewhere off this line, there's a pump mounted on the frame rail that we're going to eliminate, and we'll just run our fuel line right to the tank. Let's work on getting that thing removed. All right, I had to recruit some help. That's it. Now I could show them what's under here. This is what they had going on. It's one of those Corvette regulators like I use. And then here's that fuel pump sitting in the frame rail. And that's why we heard that thing screaming.
Want to hear the most annoying sound in the world?
In the cab, it's like right under the driver's seat. And I'm not crazy about this fuel line they're using. It's a little different than the stuff I normally use. So we're probably just gonna replace everything from here back. So I'll finish cleaning this up. And then we'll get the straps and everything swapped over from the old tank to the new tank. And then we could start figuring out our fuel pump and everything. Well, I could think of at least one good use for this pump. I'm just going to use it to suck the fuel out of the old tank. Here we go. Listen to how awful that thing is. Jeez. Yeah, you know, I can't leave it like that. I gotta power wash this and clean those up and probably spray paint them a little. See if you guys could hear that in the camera, but we got like gusts, like 50, 60 mile an hour gusts of wind. Get this door closed. Okay. I'm gonna wire wheel those a little and little black spray paint. And we'll get this thing put back together and in the truck. Nice thing is with the bed off, I could get to all this with the tank back in the truck. So I'll bolt it all in and then deal with that. All right, that wasn't too bad. The tank is back in the truck. Hopefully I could get the fuel pump in here. It's kind of close to the cab, but I should be able to kind of angle it in. I thought that was just a touch back further, like the factory one. The factory one was like back here. But I'll mess around with that next, get the fuel pump all figured out. This is for the fuel gauge, the float, and then this gets a little adapter to go onto the filler neck. So not too bad overall, went pretty smooth. Clean that thing up a little bit, and then we'll have a nice fuel pump in the tank. Won't be noisy, and it'll last longer because when they're sitting in fuel, they stay cool. So once I get all that figured out, I could make my new fuel lines down to that regulator. Okay, so you guys have seen me do this before, but in case you haven't, this is our Tanks Inc. fuel pump, and this is the hat that drops down into the tank. So you have to trim these to fit. The depth of our tank is 10.5 inches. So this is your supply line that slides over the pump. So you just got to trim that to where the bottom of this is just floating above the bottom of the tank, 1/4 inch or so. So we're going to trim it here. I measured it out. That'll all get clamped together. And then this whole unit goes down in the tank. So pretty simple. That's gone forever. So all you do is just heat this up a little. All right. And then you just trim this line just slightly above that. That's your return. And that'll just dump fuel back down into the tank, whatever's not consumed. Okay, And then you have your wiring harness that just clips onto here. And then these wires pass through the top. They have a little provision. These are like a compression fitting. Then you just snug these up, not super tight, and that seals around the wire. And obviously it's just power and ground for the fuel pump. So now all you do is take a couple of these zip ties and just make sure that return line doesn't get moved around. And then that whole unit just drops down inside the tank. So let's go over here and actually make sure this is going to clear. I should be able to sneak it in there. Put our high tack so the gasket don't leak or move around. Problem is usually getting these things in that hole to begin with. Which way do we want this to face? That's not bad. That's our supply. We could come out of here, 90, and this would come around. I think that'll work like that. So we just got to make a couple wire connections for our sending unit. This will be to the gauge, that'll be ground. And then over here, power and ground for our fuel pump, which we're going to pick up the power wire they had for that other fuel pump. And then I just got to do a couple 1/4-inch pipe thread to 6AN adapters. And this little vent here is going to get plugged off because we have a vent right here into the filler neck. That'll be the highest point. Well, fuel tank's in.
Is it going to be quieter now?
It should be a lot quieter. What do you think?
That was horrible.
You inspect it? Is it better? Is it going to be better?
Maybe more.
So I think that's going to be a wrap for this episode.
It's done. It's over.
It's over. It's there's still a lot to do, but we're getting close. So the cab still needs to be sanded down, body worked and primed and sanded, and all the other steps you saw me just do.
Yep.
But we're getting there. The doors and fenders are done. The hood is done. I need to wet sand the tailgate and the bed and do the two-tone on that next. But that'll be next week.
Yep. Gotta wait and see.
So our goal is next episode, have this thing finished, sanded, buffed, back together, and you could see it getting delivered to the customer.
Yeah.
But for now, we got to call it quits.
It's a wrap.
That's a wrap. What do you
Mama
think,
Mar.
Hound? How come you weren't in the mix helping?
You hold him this time.
I didn't see any wet sanding out of you.
Oh. He doesn't need to work.
What do
He
you
can
think?
just live off of us.
Yeah. He's a mooch.
He's a mooch. Oh.
Here, you can take him.
All right. Oh, I think he's gained some weight.
So, thank you guys so much for watching.
And we'll see you next time. You look? Oh, yeah.
You want to show him the parts in the booth?
Sure.
We need the approval from the inspector. And it's not Elizabeth.
That's because I always say you do a good job. Because you do a good job. Oh, look at that, Monticelli. Look.
He's like, it smells like paint.
Keep his paws away.
Yeah. Keep your dirty paws off of it.
He's like, okay, yeah. What do you think? I like it.